So Dragon Ball has had quite a few movies. I think the grand total is close to 20 now. But only like 2 of them are canon, and they are only the 2 most recent movies with Dragon Ball Super Broly and Dragon Ball Super Hero. So I thought it would be kind of fun to go back and look at all of the non-canon movies that they've had and kind of just put them into one big timeline to make them make sense, since none of them really fit within the main timeline anyway. So this is the Dragon Ball movie timeline. And real quick guys, I'm trying to reach 1,000 watch hours on my videos. I haven't really got that yet. I'd also love to hit like 2,000 subscribers. So if you guys could kind of share this video around and hit that subscribe button, it would be greatly appreciated. So to get this out of the way really quick, there are 3 Dragon Ball movies: Sleeping Princess and the Devil's Castle, Curse of the Blood Rubies, and Dragon Ball Mystic Adventure. So Sleeping Princess and Blood Rubies are both just retellings of Dragon Ball, but specifically Goku starting to train with Master Roshi. So realistically, either of these movies works as a good starting point for the story, with events leading up to Goku and his training all just kind of taking place. But they do lead into Dragon Ball Mystic Adventure, where the next big thing is actually Goku and Krillin participating in a different world martial arts tournament in Mifan, and this is pretty much the story of how Tien and Chaozu are introduced and how the entire gang gets together in order to fight Piccolo, with Chaozu actually being the prince of Mifan. But from there, the rest of the events take place the same as they would in the original story. Goku beats King Piccolo. Before he dies, he sends out Piccolo Jr.'s egg. Goku goes to train with Kami, beats Piccolo Jr. at the World Martial Arts Tournament, marries Chi-Chi, and then we have the time skip, with the time skip this time leading into the Dead Zone. And the next big change here is the gang finds out about Gohan when he is kidnapped for the Dragon Ball in his hat by Garlic Jr. Goku goes to get him back, and Goku, Kami, and Piccolo fight, with Krillin showing up during the fight. And then Goku, Kami, and Piccolo fight Garlic Jr. and his minions, with Krillin kind of showing up during the fight. So now, Goku and Piccolo both know about Gohan's latent power, and this is probably where Piccolo starts to plan on using Gohan to get to Goku. But then shortly after this is where Raditz would arrive on Earth and kicks off the Saiyan saga. Goku dies and goes to train with King Kai because the Dragon Balls are unusable thanks to Garlic Jr. using them. So then the Saiyans are going to come to Earth, and the only difference is Piccolo is not killed by Nappa. So they just need to wait another year to use the Dragon Balls again instead of going to Namek. Also means that Chaozu for the moment is staying dead, since Earth's Dragon Balls can only bring you back once. But they do spend the time training with King Kai, so they are still getting stronger. And just kind of for those of you who don't know, the only reason Chaozu comes back to life in the original series is because the Namekian Dragon Balls can bring people back multiple times, but we'll get to there eventually. And also, just because I'm probably going to forget to bring this up later, this makes the Garlic Jr. filler saga actually canon to the series. But that actually leads us into the next movie with the World's Strongest. And this takes place 1 year after the Saiyan saga, when Dr. Wheelo uses the Dragon Balls instead of the gang being able to use them to revive everybody. And they eventually beat Dr. Wheelo as a robot body, but now they decide that they need to go to Namek in order to use their Dragon Balls instead of waiting another year. Thus, the events of the Saiyan saga on Namek happen, but in this universe, Goku and Piccolo train together on their way to Namek after recovering from the fight with Wheelo. So they arrive together, but split up when they get to the planet, with Piccolo eventually running into Nail and fusing with him, and Goku fighting Ginyu and getting re-injured. But the overall outcome is still the same, with Goku going Super Saiyan and beating Frieza. Except for him staying on Yardrat for an entire year, he actually returns almost immediately upon learning instant transmission, and doesn't figure out how to actually access his Super Saiyan. But during that time would be when Dead Zone happens. But shortly after Goku gets back, we can move into the Tree of Might. So this takes place shortly after Goku arrives back on Earth from Yardrat. Basically, Turles shows up with the tree and fights the gang. So this should have been an easy fight if Goku knew how to use Super Saiyan, but he doesn't, plus Turles is essentially hitting him with the power of the Earth itself. But Goku does end up winning in the end. Oh, also, here's where I'm going to mention that in this universe, Gohan's tail frequently grows back. Since he transforms in this movie, this might be relevant later in the story, it might not. We're going to have to see. So about 1 year after Turles attacks, Slug would come to Earth, and we know this since he used the Dragon Balls again, so at least 1 year minimum has to have passed. This is where we see Goku start to subconsciously access Super Saiyan again, but he cannot fully transform, thus the Super Saiyan Rage form he uses against Slug. And it also explains why King Kai knows about Super Saiyan, and it says that Goku must have changed into it, but he actually didn't. He just kind of accessed the beginnings of the form fighting Slug. But they do eventually end up beating him as well. A little while after they beat Slug, Frieza and Cold would finally make their way to Earth. Now, in this universe, Goku cannot beat them because he does not know how to access Super Saiyan, and Frieza is getting a buff plus help from his father. So Trunks still ends up showing up, turning Super Saiyan, and essentially saving the day, warning everybody about the androids, and then the 3-year training time skip would occur. But with his father and brother dead, now Cooler shows up for revenge, and Goku fully accesses Super Saiyan again. This also causes Piccolo to seek out Kami to once again become one being as a way to get stronger, since he stood no chance at all against Cooler. Also, seeing just how strong Goku was, it was sort of like a wake-up call, since they would probably have been training together, and he's probably not really been doing all that well in the training. And with the Earth needing a new Guardian, this would also cause Goku to travel to New Namek in order to recruit a new Guardian, and then he would bring back Dende. But right before the androids are set to appear, Dende senses something bad on his home world, and the Z Fighters go to check it out. The threat ending up being Cooler, who found New Namek sort of just by happenstance, though he could have been searching for the Dragon Balls. Then while Goku takes on Cooler, Piccolo, Gohan, Krillin, and the gang take on his robot army. Although it's mostly Piccolo who does most of the work, which kind of makes sense at this moment, he would be the strongest of all of them, having fused with Kami. And actually, Piccolo doesn't even struggle until he is faced with multiple metal coolers. Speaking of metal cooler, he was beating Goku, who has gained full control over Super Saiyan, until Vegeta shows up, turns Super Saiyan, and the two of them defeat Cooler. And just to address this, here, Vegeta only shows his Super Saiyan to Goku in this movie. Everyone else doesn't see it until the androids show up. And also, I understand Piccolo fused with Kami would destroy Metal Cooler, but like I said, there was essentially an endless number of them, so it was more like quantity that was the problem, not necessarily the quality of the fight. Then the androids would show up like normal. The virus attacks Goku's heart. Vegeta shows up, defeats Android 19. Then they go and hunt down Android 20, aka Dr. Dro. But another slight change here is they actually managed to stop him from waking up 17 and 18. I mean, 2 Super Saiyans and a Super Namek, the androids never really stood a chance at this point. But future Trunks does still come back, but when the gang tells him they beat the 2 androids, he thinks it's mission accomplished. Thus, Goku has time to get better, Vegeta goes off to train alone again, and Trunks actually sticks around to see a show with Krillin, Roshi, and everybody. That is, until Jiro's supercomputer backup actually turns on. Thus, Super Android 13. The computer sends 13, 14, and 15 after Goku, but they are ultimately defeated after 13 basically combines with 14 and 15, and you get the Super Saiyan trifecta and everything. Now after this, the computer continues to work on Cell, but does decide to wake up 17 and 18, and then they would wake up 16. Then they go out in the world and essentially start causing chaos. Now Vegeta would have the first confrontation with them, while Goku and everybody was recovering in the hospital from the fight with Super Android 13, and he still loses to Android 18. But after this, they disappear, and the gang has to wait for them to show up since they can't sense their energy. But then Cell would come out from underground, and Piccolo would still have a confrontation with Cell while looking for the androids. Then Goku would take the Saiyans to the time chamber to train, and while in there, Piccolo would confront 17, who is eventually absorbed by Cell. Krillin doesn't shut down the other androids, and 16 fights Imperfect Cell, who has seriously powered up from feeding on a bunch of people. But pretty much events happen kind of the same as normal as far as the androids are concerned, except while relaxing for the 10 days before the Cell games, because Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan happens. Basically, Paragus and Broly come to Earth to take Vegeta away to become king of the new planet Vegeta, but they ultimately end up fighting Broly, and Paragus dies, and the gang return to Earth. The fight on the other planet doesn't really change anything, and probably takes place a couple days before the Cell games, so it does just kind of show you just how strong Broly was, since he was fighting all of these guys pretty much at their max power at that time, minus Gohan, who doesn't know how to use Super Saiyan 2 yet. But the rest of the Cell games takes place pretty much as usual. Gohan gets Super Saiyan 2 and defeats Cell. Goku dies. They use the Dragon Balls to revive everyone and remove the bomb from 17 and 18, because Goku decided he was just going to go ahead and stay dead. But just a little while after that, we get the events of Bojack Unbound. This is actually the 3rd truly canon movie, and I think earlier I said there's only 2, but there was actually 3. That was my mistake. This literally doesn't change anything, just shows you what made Vegeta want to train again, and lets everyone cut loose after the androids, and probably Gohan's last real fight before the time skip, when he uses Super Saiyan 2 to defeat Bojack. Also, this shows even if Goku is dead, he can use instant transmission to go to Earth. He just can't stay there, and will only appear as a flash of light to anyone who sees it. But after this, everything pretty much once again goes back to normal. The other world tournament happens, the 5-year time skip, Gohan going to school, and Goku saying he's going to come back for the World Martial Arts Tournament. Pretty much all the way to right before the World's Martial Arts Tournament is about to start, because while Gohan is training, Broly returns. And basically, Gohan tells Videl about the Dragon Balls, and Videl, Goten, and Trunks, Kid Trunks this time, start to look for them to make a wish. Goten's crying, wakes up Broly, who just happens to have landed on Earth. He then attacks Videl and the kids, then Gohan shows up and doesn't really do all that well since he hasn't kept up on his training, ultimately culminating with Goten making a wish without actually summoning Shenron, that he wishes that his dad was here. Then Goku sort of shows up, but not really. The only explanation I have here is because Goten hadn't ever met Goku, and Goku couldn't be brought back to life. With the wording of that wish, Shenron just brought a vision of Goku to give the boys the push they needed to beat Broly. Either way, with Trunks' help, he's defeated again, and Krillin shows up dressed like Piccolo and literally does nothing. But after this, things pretty much proceed as normal. Goku comes back, they go to the World's Martial Arts Tournament, meet the Supreme Kai, he leads them to go stop Bividi before he can bring back Majin Buu. But finally here, we actually have an actual change that instead of Krillin going with everybody to stop Bibidi, he stays at the tournament and watches his wife throw the match to Hercule. And instead of Goten and Trunks taking off after they're outed by Android 18, they just stick around as well. And this actually leads us into the events of Bio Broly. So basically, when Hercule convinces 18, Trunks, and Goten to fight for him before he gives them the money he owes them, they find out that one of the villagers they saved from Broly collected his DNA, and then they tried to clone him. But the process is messed up when Goten and Trunks recognize Broly and try to destroy him. Then essentially all hell breaks loose, and they stop him with literal seawater. And look, I don't complain a lot. I understand movies are movies. Bio Broly was the biggest waste of a film budget ever. It was stupid, and honestly, there's no real reason it ever should have been made. They were just trying to cash in on the Broly name. But after this happens, Krillin, Goten, and Trunks find a petrified Piccolo, and then help him save Vegeta from Buu. Then the events progress pretty much as normal. Vegeta dies, Goku decides to teach Goten and Trunks the fusion, shows off Super Saiyan 3 against Majin Buu. And just to rant here for a second, Goku chooses not to try and win against Buu, which according to Piccolo, he might have been able to do as a Super Saiyan 3. And Goku says maybe, but maybe not, and that it wasn't his place since he is dead, but that the boys should be able to do it no problem with fusion. So Goku at this point said, I'm done saving the planet, and once again, learning nothing from Gohan, just throws another one of his sons into a whole world-saving fight. Okay, sorry, rant's over. But then Goku goes back to Otherworld, where he finds Gohan training with the Supreme Kai. They free the Elder Kai, who unlocks Gohan's power, and Gohan goes back to Earth to fight Buu. However, the slight change here is when Gohan goes back, he doesn't fight Buu. Because in this universe, Buu's dog is not killed. So his promise to not kill anyone to Hercule stands, and he doesn't split into Evil Buu. So life on Earth pretty much goes back to normal while they wait for the Dragon Balls to become active again and wish everyone back to life. But then in the other world, we actually have the events of Fusion Reborn. So basically, 1 year passes on Earth again, and since the Earth is safe, Goku goes back to the Grand Kai's planet to compete in another tournament. That is, until one of King Yama's workers doesn't notice the canister of evil needs to be changed, and it bursts, causing him to transform, and literally all hell to break loose in Otherworld and on Earth. So the events of the movie play out. Gohan beats up a lot of villains with his ultimate form, and Goten and Trunks fuse and fight Hitler, ultimately culminating with Goku and Vegeta fusing into Gogeta and defeating Janemba. But in this universe, this event is actually what causes Buu to split into Evil Buu. Basically, all of the evil energy affects Buu, causing the split. Also, since they had to use the Dragon Balls to try and fix the situation, they couldn't count on Shenron to help stop Buu. But once this happens, the events of the story will proceed pretty much as normal, probably with Gohan going with Piccolo to fight Buu, then Gotenks showing up but ultimately achieving the same outcome of Vegeta and Goku fighting Kid Buu, both of them being brought back to life and beating Buu with Spirit Bomb, and Dende, Hercule, and Supreme Kai going to New Namek to use their Dragon Balls. But now the world pretty much goes back to normal, and 1 year later, the events of Wrath of the Dragon would take place. And now this is pretty much the long story of how Trunks gets the sword that Future Trunks had, but basically they have to fight Garudagon and free Tapion, sending him back to his homeworld after the team is tricked into using the Dragon Balls into freeing him in the first place. So I guess just forget the freaking people that Boo killed. They're going to use it to bring this guy back. Also, they fixed this by sending Tapion back in time using the second time machine that Cell used to come back. So I'm sure nothing bad will actually come from that. But from here, things go pretty much as usual, with the only changes to the events of Battle of Gods being the fight takes place at Capsule Corp instead of on the boat. Then in Resurrection F, Ginyu doesn't come back, Gohan just knocks out Pion. Then Frieza steps in, and Whis training Goku and Vegeta is condensed. And then they go back and they fight Frieza. But after that, everything in Super happens, up to and including Future Trunks coming back, and Goku and Vegeta fighting Goku Black, the Universe Exhibition Tournament, and then the Tournament of Power. And unfortunately, this is where the story ends. Everyone lives happily ever after. But if you have been keeping count, we have 2 more movies to account for, and those movies are, like I said at the beginning of the video, Super Broly and Super Hero. And unfortunately, these will not fit into this particular timeline since they retold the story of Broly and are just kind of continuations at this current moment of the actual anime. At this moment, they are canon. But if we remove the 3 Broly movies, it won't really affect the overall story, and you can move these to the end and accomplishes kind of the same ending. Where after the Tournament of Power, Frieza brings Broly and Paragus to Earth, and Goku and Vegeta fuse to beat him until he is wished away to save his life. Then about 3 years later, Pan is kidnapped by the Red Ribbon Army, Gohan and Piccolo get new forms, and we see Goten and Trunks finally aged up, with the big fight there being against Cell Max, all while Goku, Vegeta, and Broly are training under Whis on Beerus' planet to hide from Frieza. Personally, I think this is the route I would prefer, since I like how it wraps up Gohan's story as well as Broly stays alive, and Broly's one of the cooler characters. But the door is actually left open for the events of GT happening, since in this universe, canonically, the Saiyans regrow their tails, making Super Saiyan 4 possible. So possibly instead of Frieza coming back and Beerus coming to Earth, you get the big time skip, and then they end up fighting with Oob and the events of GT happening. But hey, let me know in the comments down below, does this timeline work? Do all the changes I made make sense? And would you have done anything differently? Also, which route would you prefer it take to end? Would you rather this timeline drift off into GT, or would you rather just remove the Broly movies and bring this all into Super? Let me know in the comments down below. While you guys are down there, please remember to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, turn on the notification bell so you never miss another video from me. And I will see you guys in the next video.